whose new book is really groundbreaking, and Desiree Hertog, who's part of the Academy for Future Science, along with Dr. J.J. Hertog, Keys of Enoch. Keys of Enoch was a breakthrough book that opened up, I feel, the world to a multidimensional reality. So we're going to be talking about this interchange between spirit, consciousness, and whoever these visitors are. Then we have the lovely Tricia McCannon. Hi, Tricia. Tricia's new, but she's been around. She's new to Contact, but she has been on the scene for a long, long time with her amazing books. And I wanted Whitley Strieber here today because Whitley is one of the pioneers, and his latest book, Supernatural, was a real breakthrough, I thought. It just came out, so get it if you haven't gotten it. And it's a breakthrough in understanding this contact situation, and it might not be everything we thought it was. It's not the little box that we thought we want to put this phenomena in. It's much bigger. And we have the lovely Linda Moulton Howe, one of the experts, one of the all-time leaders in the field. So let's just start off with a kind of general opening idea of this union of, because more and more people are equating this phenomena to something about consciousness. It's no longer about ships in the sky or the hardware. And there's a big change in people coming to this show over the last 4 years, where we've gone more towards this awakening of consciousness and what the phenomena, or whatever you want to call it, really means to each of us. So that's the kind of track I'd like to proceed on. And why don't we start with you, Linda? Because you're people don't know you're a mystic as well. No, she's had some amazing experiences. So go ahead. Thank you.
Well, the word consciousness, I guess, is at the root of what we're all trying to understand, what humans are in relationship to one or more intelligences that seem to have been manipulating this planet for a very long time, past, present, now, and future. And when I think of all the people that I've interviewed over the last 3 decades in the human abduction syndrome, I think that the bottom line is that they don't have a clue what they're really dealing with. And if the human abductees themselves don't have clarity on what is interacting with them, the rest of us are on the outside. But having said that, a lot of people in the human abduction syndrome will say that we have been being pushed by something out there that feels that we deserve to survive against other forces that think we should not survive. And that the whole key to that survival is going to be to rapidly change all of the consciousness of Homo sapiens sapien. And that is, I think, what is so important about Contact and the conferences where we come together and we are trying to address what consciousness do each of us have? And it's becoming so clear on planet Earth that the consciousness is not shared from person to person. And that makes us vulnerable to manipulation. If we could be told all the truth about our history and our present, it could change our entire relationship to ourselves and to this intelligence that I think has taken advantage of the fact that we were made, we are androids, but now something special is occurring, and that something is moving rapidly to change all of the world's consciousness, and it is as if our lives depended on it.
Well, thank you. Beautiful. Exactly. Wait, Whitley, I think you want to come in on that because it seems very much in alignment with what you're talking about.
Yeah, am I on?
Yeah.
Yes, good. I can come in on that. One of the things that has happened is that those of us who have this experience are pretty much all in the same boat. Not too many of us have a an entirely beautiful experience or an entirely evil one. It's very complex and very mixed. And yet there's something about it that leaves you feeling that somehow, no matter what it is, you're in the presence of something quite sacred. And what does that mean? Does that mean it should be cherished? Well, it may, but it also means it should be watched very carefully, because what the sacred is that which knows its own truth. It knows its own truth. And so if you find yourself, as I have in my life, face to face with something that seems to be literally radiating evil, then you should care for that. You should not fool around. You should think to yourself, well, this is somebody whose truth has turned out to be fairly unfortunate for them, and they're not happy. And then you find yourself face to face, as I have as well, with somebody whose very presence drives you into deeper and deeper question, who seems to kind of almost bubble with a sort of joy that is extremely serious at the same time. And you think to yourself, well, I want more of that. And Linda was talking about this manipulation, it is a manipulation. It's been going on for a very long time, I think. And it's time for us to take control of it. We need to do some manipulating too. And the way we do that is by seeing this very complex situation for what it is. Now, if I was speculating about why it's like this, and there are many shadings in between. People will talk to you about robotic beings, and I've had experiences with those too. I mean, we all pretty much in the close encounter experience have similar things happen to us. I've also had a lot of experience with a particular individual who's on the cover of Communion. I think it's one individual, although it could easily be I'm wrong, who was brilliant, extremely provocative, not afraid to challenge me to the point that I could have easily gone mad. Not afraid at all. Willing to do literally anything. But this individual showed something some true colors at one point that have resonated with me for the rest of my life. My brother was up at my cabin. This is many years ago when the visitors were coming almost every night. And I was showing him around, and I was really proud of the place and all the things I had done and my accomplishments. And he was a young lawyer just starting out in life. And, I was the older brother, and an older brother is never necessarily good news to a younger brother. So I was taking him through the woods and showing him everything. And suddenly I heard a voice in my head, the voice of that being on the cover of Communion. It said, "Arrogance. I can do anything I want to you." And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble now. Again, I'd been in trouble before, but so we went down into the clearing where the event had happened, and suddenly this UFO appeared in the sky, which we both saw, and my brother was just awed by it. I'd seen things like it before there, and I had frankly sort of hoped he would see something. But instead of thinking, oh my, isn't it wonderful, I am so cool, I thought, now I know I'm in trouble, but what will happen? Here's what happened. The next day, my bank called and said, "Mr. Strieber, we've got a lot of checks from you, but we don't know what to do with them." And I said, well, process them. He said, well, you don't have an account with us. I said, do you know me, don't you? We knew each other. We had on first name terms. And I said, yes, I do. He said, but I can't find the account. It's not in our system anymore. Did you change banks? I said, no, I didn't do anything. And I thought, this is it. They've made my money disappear. And I went through, after I hung up the phone, I realized I had in my pocket about $50, and that was everything. I had a family to feed, and my money was gone. And what would I do? Where would I get? I had no idea. I was just completely flabbergasted. Plus, there were all these checks that were going to bounce at the end of the day. So, yes, humbling. So I called the bank and I said, can you at least hold the checks overnight? Because this has got to be your fault. You've got to find this account. It can't just disappear. They finally found it on a record in a special storage that the bank used in case of a disaster. And they restored it the next day. But I learned something very fundamental then, and that is that humility is really important, and it is to be respected. Everyone is to be respected, and everyone is as valuable as oneself. Everyone is.
Thank you.
So I'm finished, but I just wanted to...
Was there a final point, though?
Yeah, okay. The final point is this. Part of this experience is calling to us and making demands on us that we come to a better, higher level of consciousness and offering us help. And it's available in every life that wants it. You just have to ask, but be careful what you ask for.
Thank you, because you'll be tested, right? Tricia, you want to talk about your experiences as a contactee and also as a channel of sorts, as a leader of spiritual communities.
Oh, yeah, good. It's working. Hi, I'm Tricia McCannon, and it's great to actually be here. This is my first time at Contact at the Desert, although I have been speaking around the world for about 20 years. And, you know, when I first started speaking, I was actually heading up the UFO panels at the Whole Life Expo in about 10 cities for about the first 5 years. And some of these guys were actually on my panels. And one of the things that I saw in the beginning of the UFO movement, at least when I entered it 25 years ago, actually more than that, about 30 years ago, was that it seemed like there was a big division. The boys were all about the metallurgical samples. Have you noticed that? And the girls were much more about spirituality. So the guys were all about, you know, give me the machines and we want the layouts and, you know, how does it all run and how does it work? And the women were open to things like spirituality and angels and the interdimensionality of the whole thing. And for me, there's never been any separation. I think it's like the male brain that we all have, whether we're a man or a woman, and the female brain. And mastery is the activation of both parts of ourselves coming together, which is what opens the third eye.
Well, we have an even panel tonight. Look at that.
We do. We have an awesome panel. And I think that the UFO movement has come light years in the last 20 years. And now there are wonderful people like the men and women on this panel that are speaking on both subjects. For me, I have been a mystic, clairvoyant since I was a little girl. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I lived across my family from a great forest, and I could see the elementals in the forest. And I think that most people couldn't see them, and so they told those elementals, told the overlighting and angel of that forest to come and speak with me. So when I was 8 years old, this angel began to come and teach me about the great chain of being and how spirit is stepped down through these dimensional levels to where we eventually come into the physical world. And they also explained to me how everything has consciousness, that the universe is conscious. Now, there are varying degrees of consciousness, like there might be some people more conscious than we are. There might be some extraterrestrials more. We might be more conscious than a rock or a stone or a plant. But the consciousness is the common denominator throughout the entire universe. And consequently, we are all connected to one another. So in my experience as a child and a teenager and growing up, I had ongoing contact with beings from spaceships and angels and masters and divas and elementals. So for me, there was never any separation of these things because I was having experiences from these higher realms. Some of the beings were completely physical and human. Some of them come from the Pleiades. I remember when I was 7 years old, I was on a ship, and there was a man in kind of like a space flight suit with a lit console behind him, and there was a huge dome above our head. And he said, you know, when you look into the stars at night, we come from a planet around one of those stars. I was like, well, that makes sense to me. You know, I'm 7 years old. Sure, of course. And I said, well, how long have you been coming to this planet? And he said, many, many times. We have been coming for eons. And he actually energetically touched my third eye, and I found myself back in time as a tall extraterrestrial man helping to build the entire underground complex at Giza. And this was in preparation for the time that we knew that Atlantis would go down. And throughout the years, like when I was 12 years old, a group of beings appeared at the end of my bed. And there were 5 of them, and they looked translucent in these beams of light. And, you know, they were telling me that I wouldn't see them for a while. They said, you know, you volunteered to come to this planet. You're an activator. You're one of many that have come to this planet at this critical time. And, you know, you have a job assignment. You will see us later, but we're leaving now. So, you know, see you later. Good luck on your mission. We'll check in from time to time. And that's why, you know, when I've been able to take people out to call in ships, out of 33 times, 30 times physical ships have shown up because they keep tabs on me. So, you know, that's just fine with me for them to keep tabs. I've also encountered beings that are profoundly, profoundly higher in consciousness that have eagle heads. One of them is really my great teacher. And, you know, he was thought of as Horus long ago. Of course, he can take a human form. I've seen the cities inside the inner earth. They've shown me globes where the locations of the inner earth cities are. When I was 16, they took me in a ship and showed me the solar system, and the whole planet, the planetary system, was being moved up to a whole nother dimensional level, and there were people leaving the planet that weren't ready for that. They were deciding to leave or die, and there were other people coming to the planet, and there were all these ships parked around the planet, and they said, this is what's going to happen to your planet. This is long before the word ascension even hit our vocabulary. So it's a big conversation, and multidimensional consciousness is part of it. And the left brain and the right brain need to get married to each other so that we can sort of be on the same page with it.
Thank you. And I want to get back at some point to that thing, the idea you brought up that we're at a critical juncture. But let's continue with Dr. Hancock in 1973. I don't know if people know this, but he had a transcendental experience. He actually had an ascension experience where, from the books and the conversations I've had with him, where he left this earth plane and he was in touch with what's called the ultra-terrestrials, and it was a dramatic transformation that I think changes one forever. Do you want to talk about that, Dr. Hancock?
I would certainly like to do that with Desiree at my side. I was a formal academic until about 40-some years ago, when I began to take seriously the power of the mantrams used in Eastern and Near Eastern religion. And I began to use the holy names, and I had the series of experiences that led to the writing of a book most of you know as a metaphysical, paraphysical book of dealing with our human multidimensionality. And in this age of what I will call inner spirituality, we're seeing the boundaries being erased, and people's, not only from the east and west, but from the north and south, are coming together. And I would like to touch on this in terms of the experiential side. Desiree and I have shared with the shamans in Brazil, who believe the star people are coming back now because they can't wait for the intellectual games of the Northern Americans and Europeans to resolve these issues that we've lost, the unconditional love, the pulse that brings us all together. And so, Desiree, you might want to give your impressions.
Well, I was going to go back a little bit to what Tricia McCannon had said, is we originally worked a little bit with J. Allen Hynek, and it was really strange because he was looking for those nuts and bolts. But every time he went out and really did the investigation, like Pascagoula, Mississippi, he found aliens that would float, that would communicate with the brain, that had a message for the planet. And it was really difficult for him to put this together. When he went to South America, amazing things would happen in the midst of some of these contactees. And it was just confusing for people at that time. But I believe now we are at a critical threshold, and we are starting to put together an understanding that we are not alone in the universe, but, and the important thing is the but, there are many different levels of intelligence that are here and trying to contact us. And that's why it's hard to get the consensus, even though I think we're pretty consensual tonight, actually. It's amazing, because the fact is that some are here because they want to do medical experiments. They like our DNA. They like our souls. I know this is something Linton and Moulton House talked about. There's others who are here to help and assist us because of the changes going on this planet. And believe me, they are major. Part of our work with the Academy for Future Science, which is an international organization, has looked at like CO2 levels. Our levels of CO2 are much higher right now than they were at the last ice age. I mean, it's incredible. We're like going back millions of years to get the levels of CO2. Is it all from our car emissions? Probably not, because it seems, and that's the work of the Keys of Enoch, that the last 40 years, they've been preparing us for contact. And why is it not that they don't just land on the White House lawn? Because contact is so much more intricate and multidimensional.
It's not simply physical contact, but consciousness contact. And this is why we think of the consciousness shift going on. We're rediscovering ourselves as multidimensional beings. We're no longer locked in fixed science and religion. We're seeing an emergent spirituality, more authentic, more universal, and also requiring a sense of dedication to the whole human race. This is what I admire in the work of all of the panelists and presenters here. People have gone out of their way to look at the collective picture holistically, because the questions as to who's on first base or who are the good white hats or the black hats, these are elementary questions regarding those who have had opportunities to be briefly on the other side or with the higher spiritual guides and teachers. We are all part of a large cosmic university, and we're being prepared to graduate from Schoolhouse Mother Earth into this cosmic university.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Graham, how does this transformation, this awakening fit into the ancient histories that you've been studying and the past, and where we're at now in our critical time forward?
Okay. I'll come at that in a circuitous way. Okay, so I'm sitting in the Amazon jungle in the middle of a clearing. We've set up some benches in the clearing, and I have drunk a powerful visionary brew called ayahuasca. And as I'm sitting there and the ayahuasca begins to work, I go through the nausea and all of that, and I get into a deep, altered state of consciousness. Suddenly, I become aware of a group of, UFO'S right above me. And I see this face, which is very like the face of a typical alien gray. And it's looking down at me from the sky. And I'm filled with terror. With ayahuasca visions, it's better to keep your eyes closed. If what you find is frightening, you can often block it by opening the eyes. So this is what I do. I open my eyes because I get the strong sense that they're going to take me, and I don't want to be taken. And I open my eyes and I say, no! Of course, what I should have done was kept my eyes closed and said, yes! Fear is never going to serve us in these situations. I was in the Amazon because I had become aware of remarkable similarities in art around the world. Going back deep into the human story, way back to the painted caves 40,000 years ago or more, and through the cultures of the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, coming into the modern age, and then shamanistic cultures all around the world. And there are astonishing similarities in the imagery that is presented, and I wanted to understand that. And then I came across some excellent academic work which had been done by Professor David Lewis Williams at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. And he really makes an excellent case that the similarities in this art all around the world can be explained if we understand that this is visionary art, that these artists are entering deeply altered trance states. They're then returning to the normal alert problem-solving state, and they're painting what they've seen in their visions. I got to know one of the Amazonian painters. He was an ayahuasca shaman, although eventually he stopped drinking ayahuasca. His name was Pablo Amaringo, great painter. And he painted his ayahuasca visions. And in his paintings, repeatedly, we see images of flying saucers and entities that look a bit like our idea of aliens. So I asked Pablo, why are you painting flying saucers? Is this what are they? What are these things? And he said something very interesting, which I've never since forgotten. He said, I said, are these vehicles for bringing, advanced technological beings here from other planets? He said, no. He said what these are is vehicles for entering and leaving the spirit world. And when a shaman talks of the spirit world, he is just a hair's breadth away from the notion of parallel dimensions or parallel universes. And I wonder if it's not the case that reality in which we are immersed is vastly more complicated and nuanced than we imagine. We have a certain set of senses, our eyes, our ears, we hear, hearing, taste, smell, touch, and so on, the five senses. And we already know that it's a mistake to think that what we can see with our five senses is all of reality. Why do we know that? Because we can get out a microscope and see tiny stuff that we couldn't see with our naked eyes. So the notion that we can't see everything with our senses is a good notion. And the suggestion is that in deeply altered states of consciousness, we alter the receiver wavelength of the brain. And we allow the brain to gain access to other levels of reality that are normally closed off to us. And I have a feeling that that is part of what we are involved in the UFO and alien mystery. Whatever this is, it's something that goes back into the very origins of humanity. It goes back a very long way. Whoever these entities are, they have been with the human race as teachers for countless aeons. I also wrote a book called Supernatural, published in 2005, and the subtitle of that book is Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind. I think we're jumping too quickly to a materialistic conclusion to assume that those are just high-tech beings a bit like us who've conquered the crossing of interstellar space. In a way, I think that rather minimizes and diminishes the mystery. I think it's much more complicated and much more mysterious than that, and that we are interacting through many layers and many levels with all kinds of entities and intelligences. And maybe intelligence is not fundamentally physical. Maybe consciousness is one of the fundamental forces of the universe, like gravity or electricity. It's there. And maybe it's simply manifesting in physical form. In short, I think we should preserve our sense of mystery. We should open inquiries into human consciousness. Neuroscientists really don't know a lot about consciousness. They can't explain consciousness. We should open inquiries into consciousness, and we should use the shamanistic plants and fungi that have been available to our ancestors for tens of thousands of years as tools to inquire into this mystery of consciousness. In that way, I think we may get close to the answer to what the problem is. Just one last word on this. Rick Strassman at the University of New Mexico giving dimethyltryptamine, the most powerful hallucinogen known to man, to human volunteers. More than 50% of his volunteers had experiences that were indistinguishable from the experiences of UFO abductees. And here's what a number of them said without comparing notes. The entities they met in their deeply altered state of consciousness said this to them. They said, "We're so glad you've discovered this technology. Now we can communicate with you much more easily." Think about it.
Thank you. I mean, there does seem to be a sort of agreement among the panelists about there's this mystery that is unknown that we're trying to define, we're trying to put into a box, and it's in a sense unknowable. I mean, John Mack, who was a great inspiration for many people, he said, UFOs are like an outreach program from the universe for the consciously impaired. And that's us. So Laura, how do you pull this together from the spiritual understandings you have into the next step forward in our evolution?
Hi, everybody. I love these